Hello everyone and welcome to a game that just ended from the finals of the AI Cup Division 1 winners section. It is Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with the black pieces against Magnus Carlsen. This is game 3 of their match and it's really an incredible one. Last time the position from their game was reached and believe it or not we have 18 moves of known theory was in 2005 from a game from the MTEL Masters tournament between Vishwanathan Anand and Veselin Topalov. But we're gonna get to that. Let's dive straight into it. Magnus has the white pieces and he opens with pawn to e4. And interestingly, in this final match, both Maxime is playing the Sicilian against Magnus and Magnus is playing the Sicilian against Maxime. So knight f3, d6, and now pawn to d4. Captures. We have knight to f6, knight to c3, and now a6. In the previous game, Maxime tried knight to c6 on the second move instead of going pawn to d6, but here he sticks to the good old Najdorf variation. Bishop to e3, the burn or the English attack, and now knight to g4. And here, this is the so-called anti-English variation against the Najdorf, anti-English against the English attack against the Najdorf, where something very interesting happens. Magnus just goes back bishop to c1, and Maxime goes back knight to f6, and now we have pawn to f3. So it's the exact same position as you would have if bishop to e3, knight to g4, bishop back to c1, and knight to f6 were not played. So, you try it. The reason you try it is because if after bishop to e3, the main move is pawn to e5. So obviously Magnus wanted Maxime to play that, but he doesn't want to go into this knight to g4 line, and then he just goes back and gets a fresh start. So it's a very neat trick to have if you don't like playing against this knight to g4 line. So pawn to e6 with bishop to e3, and now pawn to b5, preparing to push that pawn all the way to b4, queen to d2, and now knight b to d7. We have pawn to g4 and pawn to b4, attacking the knight. Position is still a known one. Levon Arnyan had it against Alexander Grishuk in the 2018 St. Louis Blitz tournament, where knight to d1 was played, but here Magnus goes knight to a4. We have pawn to h6, and now queenside castles by Magnus. We have knight to e5, pawn to b3, now defending the knight and also freeing up the knight so it can go to b2 and then to c4 or d3 later on. All depends on what black plays. Bishop to d7, attacking the knight, and knight to b2. We have pawn to d5, striking in the center. We always say if you manage d5 as a Sicilian player, you are very happy with your life. Bishop to f4, attacking the knight, expecting knight to g6, but no, Maxime plays knight captures on f3. He sacrifices a piece here for 2 pawns, and like I said, it has been done before. Topalov sacrificed this knight here in 2005 against Vishwanathan Anand, and their game ended in a draw. So Magnus takes the knight, and now knight captures on e4, attacks the queen here. Queen to d4, Magnus plays the same move Anand played, and now Topalov played pawn to f6. But Maxime switches it up, he plays rook to g8, and it is now as of move 18 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Magnus plays this. He plays knight to e5, which is a spectacular move, because how does black continue here? Now, the knight to e5 really puts Maxime's piece sacrifice to the test, because if you play anything other than the top move recommended by the engine, you're not going to have a great time. Let's say you play g5. g5 is a very nice move, but if you allow the simple knight captures, queen captures, and the bishop moves, what are you playing? There's just no good move you can make here. If you go knight to c3, you attack the rook to e1. That's just a really bad position. You can't move the rook, otherwise bishop captures and a6 happens. You can't really develop. It's a terrible position for black. So the only thing Maxime can do is play bishop to c5, attack Magnus's queen here. And now, of course, you know what Magnus does. He does not go back. He plays queen captures on e4. Now, Maxime sacrificed the knight. Magnus says, I can do a little bit better, and he sacrifices the full queen. So d captures on e4, and now knight captures on d7. And although you can continue playing this with the queens on the board, Maxime decided to play queen captures on d7 right away. The problem is if queen e7, how are you ever developing? Let's say bishop to c4, just a nice developing move. Now you try to get some pieces in the game. Let's say you play rook to d8. Already bishop captures on a6 happens. And if rook captures on d7, because you would gladly give back at least some material, bishop to b5. And now after you move the queen, let's say you attack the bishop, bishop captures on d7 check, king goes here, and now rook to f1, and just a terrible position for black. The knight will come to c4, and with the bishop pair, the rook pair, and the mighty knight on c4, black will have a terrible time playing this game. Especially with little time on the clock. So Maxime decided to play queen captures on d7 instead, rook captures on d7, and king captures. So what's the count here? Well, Maxime is still up 2 pawns. He has 7 pawns to Magnus's 5, but Magnus does have a light square bishop and the knight for a rook. So if he can position his bishop pair nicely and get a good square for his knight, he should be better. Knight to c4, of course, the knight now comes into the game. Pawn to g5 with bishop to e5 and king to e7, not allowing the bishop to come to f6. We have pawn to h4 now, and rook a to d8, grabbing hold of the open d file. We have h captures on d5, on g5, rook captures, putting pressure on the bishop here, and just bishop to e2. Now defending the g4 pawn, rook to g6, and now bishop to f4. We have bishop to d4, and now comes knight to e5, attacking the rook and also threatening knight to c6 check with a nice fork here. So Maxime takes it, and now bishop captures on e5 and pawn to f5. Now undoubling his pawns, g captures, e captures, and now bishop to f4. So okay, Magnus has 2 bishops for a rook, but Maxime does have the passed f pawn and the passed e pawn, and if he can start pushing them, it should yield at least a draw. We have pawn to a5, and now bishop captures on h6. Of course, not rook captures on h6. That would be a bit too dangerous. If rook captures, bishop captures. Now it's much easier to push those pawns than with than the other way around. So king to d6 even better. It's easier to push them. So instead, bishop captures on h6. Magnus keeps the rook on the board, and now rook to g2. If you go rook to h8, of course, bishop to g5 check is just very annoying for black. So we have rook to g2, putting pressure on the bishop, and now bishop to f1, attacking the rook. We have rook to g6, and now bishop to e3. So okay, it's only 4 pawns to 3, but again, those are 2 incredibly strong pass pawns. Magnus will now would now very much enjoy gobbling up those queenside pawns. If he does that, he no longer has to worry about his back rank issues. As long as this pawn is here, the king is pretty much stuck from entering the game. So king f6, we have bishop to c4, king to e5, and now rook to h. Sorry, obviously not that. Rook to h7, trying to get behind the black king. Pawn to f4, the pawns now start marching forward, rook h5 check. We have king to f6, bishop to b6 now. As the king blocks the rook, the bishop now attacks the pawn. Now the rook is attacked here and the pawn is attacked here, and you can't really defend it. If you go rook to a8, just a nice bishop to d5, and there's really no good way for you to continue keeping control of the pawn on a5. So instead, after bishop to b6, rook to d7 was played, and now bishop captures on a5. We have rook to g1 check, king to b2, and now pawn to f3. The reason you don't double up on the back rank is that bishop captures on b4, and you can always put the king on a3, and you are very safe there. So f3, Maxime starts advancing his passed pawn, bishop captures on b4. We have pawn to f2, and now bishop to c3 with check. So it seems that Maxime is very close to promoting that pawn and maybe winning the game, but look at the bishop pair and look at the rook. Who is better here? That's the real question. King to g6. Maxime moves the king with tempo. Rook to e5, putting the rook behind the passed pawn, and now rook to e1. The problem is, if you just trade here, it would be a completely winning position for Magnus, because he also captures the pawn on e4, and now he will have a bishop and 3 pawns for a rook, and that's of course completely winning. So rook to e1 instead. He defends the pawn, now wants to get this pawn all the way down the board. Rook to e6 with check. We have king to g5, now rook to f6, putting pressure on the pawn here, and pawn to e3. Maxime defends it. We have rook to f8, and now comes rook to c7. And here the position is actually drawn. You have to play something like rook to d1 or king to h4. Maxime, who had more time on the clock, I think he had like a minute and a half. Magnus had maybe less than 40 seconds, Maxime played rook to c7, and it comes with a very straightforward idea. You eliminate the bishop that's defending f1, and then you promote the pawn to a queen, and you win the game. The problem is it also allows him, Magnus, to win the game, which is what Magnus did. Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that wins the game for Magnus while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this very nice and only solution. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is, of course, bishop to d4. That's the move. And you're probably wondering, but rook captures on c4 does the same thing now. Not really, because bishop captures on e3 comes with check. That's the problem. And there's really no better way than rook captures on c4. This is what Maxime played. Now comes bishop captures on e3 with check, and now, of course, it doesn't really matter what you play. If you move the king, it's not much better. Rook captures on e3 was played, b captures on c4, and he was in this position on move 50 that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So 2 draws, and then Magnus wins the third game. It is now all up to game 4. Can Maxime retaliate, or will Magnus take the full match? So here you resign because, okay, you're up 2 pawns, and you're going to win this pawn as well. If you defend, it doesn't really work. Just king c3, and now if king g4, king to d3 forces the rook off of the second rank, and after you move the rook, then rook captures on f2. You're up 3 pawns. Of course, the black king completely cut off. You are winning this game easily. And now, for those of you who are interested, I'm just gonna quickly check what is happening with game 4, because I'm recording this as they are playing. Not to spoil anything, but it is nothing conclusive. So to be decided, we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by both of them. Very nice sacrifice by Maxime. Very nice counter sacrifice by Magnus. So look at this, a beautiful knight captures on f3 move here. Sacrificing a piece. Magnus sacrifices a queen in return. Maxime wants nothing to do with it, gives back the queen, and then they just played this endgame where Magnus outplayed him from pretty much an equal position. So yeah, once again, really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank J. and Sutton, GroznyChessFestival.org.gg, BulletChessThriller.com, eBay Numismatics, and The Brooders on Spotify for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and everything else that's happening in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.